Johnson, and this is focused on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, Mount Nimba to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Boakai, to educate, elevate, and promote. Talk about home affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information, history, talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Ja.
And I am Anthony Sie, and a pleasant welcome to Focus on Liberia. And of course, you heard it there. We are about educating, elevating, and promoting, if you like, the discourse of Liberia. Today's edition promises to be a great national discussion. The Boakai administration has just entered into a third year in the game of football that Dr. George Williams is very familiar with. This is like, this is second half. And in first half, if you didn't do too well, second half, you better buckle up and get the job done, or as your opponent, must score a goal, and maybe you might not be qualified for the next match or the next competition. Well, seated and ready to participate in this very significant discussion is Dr. George Williams. He is an educator, and he is also an opinion leader in our country, Liberia. That is good to see you. How you doing? How's family?
I'm doing well. Anthony, it's great to be here. Family is okay. We're all thriving. Amidst all of the challenges, we're thriving, and we're very hopeful, optimistic that things are going to get better, not worse. And that is why we keep pushing on.
And we cannot stop pushing, because that is our responsibility to push ourselves, push our fellow citizens, our countrymen in our country to make it a better country. You just came from Liberia, as I am too. How was your trip?
Answering the trip was, during those of us who grew up under the Samuel Doe, government ministers, every trip they made, they came back, they said the trip was fruitful and rewarding. And so I liken my recent visit home as you know, I am actually transitioning back to Liberia,
Right.
leaving the U.S. after 15 years, and so the trip back home was not just to reconnect with family, but also consolidate some of the gains that we have put in place to ensure that a smooth transition from here over there. Yeah, so yeah, it was fruitful. We had a chance to assess the terrain and engage stakeholders, likely partners in the process, register our businesses, talk to, scout around to see where the opportunities are, and there were many, very many. We
That's
talked
good.
to some of the players who control some of those key areas
Mm-hmm.
as a way of registering our interest in some of those areas, whether it be in or outside of government, more so outside of government than inside in government. But we're happy to see that the major decision makers are players with whom we are very familiar. That's a positive. We're happy to have seen the level of development. The Morovia skyline has changed, Anthony. And the change in the Morovia skyline for me, from an economic perspective, from a social perspective, from an infrastructure perspective, tells me that there's a lot of great things going on, and I would love to be a part of it. And so going home at this time couldn't be better.
And that I just hope that all of us, especially those of us with whom it is possible to go home, we should go home. And that is no place like home. We met there and we went to a few places together.
Yeah.
Either way, our country is a beautiful place. All we need to do is to collectively work together and bring all our expertise and strength together to create the conditions that we enjoy in other countries. I don't think there's anything better than being home. Tom is focused on Liberia resident economist, now based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where he is contributing to global development. Tom, it's good to have you. Welcome. How you doing? How's work?
Work is fine. It's great to join you guys. I mean, for a while now, I haven't been able to come on the show because of the time difference. But it's great to join you both, and the others that will come. Hello to all of our listeners. I think 3 years in the administration is a good time to take a pause and be able to see what is working, what the gaps are, and how the team can be able to strengthen and address the gaps for us to be able to double our steps and move forward.
Definitely. So those of you who are joining us, we want to welcome you to Focus on Liberia. This is a special edition, and we want you to do us a favor by sharing the broadcast with somebody, because we are going to do an assessment of the current administration now in its third year. This is second half, by the way. We want to look at, what they have been able to accomplish, the challenges they have. And then after looking at that, we'll be looking at the prospects. And so today, we turn to the big picture, the state of the Boakai Presidency. President Joseph Yima Boakai Sr. came into office in January 2024 on a message of the rule of law and a break from the governing failures of his predecessor. Entering into year 3 of his administration, it is time for us to give a clear eye accounting of his administration. What has been delivered, what has been promised and deferred, and what is Liberia, and where is Liberia headed under his administration? Our panelists will now hold back with their analysis and their perspective. Gentlemen, let us get started. That you get us started here, and I'm not going to waste time. So 2 years in, the Boakai administration, what is your own assessment first of the administration 3 years in and 3 years left? What is your assessment in every respect in terms of governance?
So, governance is not a monolithic landscape. It's governance from the economic standpoint, governance from the political standpoint, governance from a structural standpoint. I think this president actually inherited a dysfunctional, structurally defective setup. And 2 years in, there's a lot that I personally expected the president to start from. One of those areas, I'll be honest with you, one of those areas would be as far as the governance structure is concerned. I'm one of those who definitely believe that the government is overbloated. The government's too big, and the size of the government renders the government ineffective and inefficient at many different levels. You cannot use the government as the primary, or government cannot continue to be the primary source of employment. We have to make government more efficient. And the ways to make government more efficient is to streamline government. What we see happening over the last 3 years is an expansion of the already bloated government structure. And so that's one. I think, however, despite that observation, that this government has been able to institute a few achievements. One of those achievements will be what we regard as macroeconomic stability. The economy has been stable now for a while, given all of the different shocks, global shocks, the withdrawal and closure of USAID, and the implications of that on many economies around the world. The government has shown itself to be resilient and have been able to absorb those shocks. Revenue generation has gone up. As far as the LRA output reports are concerned, revenue has gone up. Revenue going up means generally that there is growing confidence, not just in the economy, which is a reflection of confidence in the government as well. And so that's a positive. As far as the structural issues are concerned, internationally, we've done well. In 2 years, this government has been able to put Liberia back on the map in terms of respectability, recognition, so much so now that we're on the Security Council. It's another conversation what we're going to do with that level of representation, what we're going to do in terms of helping our country move forward. The government, however, is still struggling with foreign direct investment. They're still struggling with that. And if you understand what's obtaining globally, you can empathize with the fact that investors aren't in a hurry to separate with their resources simply because there's a lot going on around the world. Here we are on the verge of World War III. With everything that's going on globally, there are fears in investment fears, and so it's no surprise that people are holding on to what they have, even though other countries, more advantageous and marketing wise, have been able to attract some foreign investment. I hear Burkina Faso is making some advances. I hear Sierra Leone has been able to attract some, huge foreign direct investments. But again, one of the, and I will close down soon after this, for me, one of the challenges that I observe, having been in the country with you, Anthony, is that this whole challenge of putting partisanship over professionals. I see more professionals walking the streets of Monrovia than those contracted or attracted by the government to help the government achieve its goals. And that is a major, major challenge that the government needs to deal with.
Thank you. And Tom, first thing I want to get from you is personnel is key in any level of governance. Who have you hired to do the job? What skills do they have? Are they in the right places? That is key if you want to be successful. Dr. Josh, while Willen said, they are coming from a place of chaotic governance, that the structures were completely disarranged, and they inherited a messy system, as he put it. I'm paraphrasing his words, and that they've been able to stabilize that. I think he made that summation. Looking at that and where we are now and how they are doing, what is your impression so far before we get to the details of the achievements, and the failures?
I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think one of the things that the current administration has brought back is the issue of making sure that institutions can work, that they can focus on their mandate. Because all of these institutions that we create, they have specific mandates to be able to deliver on. That's why all of the institutions are created by an act of the legislature. And if you take the law that create any one of these institutions, it lays out exactly what they need to do. So all of them come together, combine, make up the public sector. And the public sector also is divided into two. You have the civil service, and then you have people who are part of the public sector, but they are outside the civil service. So for instance, the army, the police, and all of that, they are outside the civil service. Also, people who are appointed by the government, they are not civil servants, they are public servants. So the difficulty with public sector, not only in Liberia, globally, is that it's difficult to be able to deal with the public sector. And Liberia has been doing a lot of work to be able to improve the capacity and also improve the performance of its public sector. So for instance, I think around 2016 on to 2020, 2021, there was a project funded by the World Bank, USAID, and Sweden in the European Union called the Public Sector Modernization Program. And so it was trying to introduce a lot of reforms, performance evaluation, for instance, and also to be able to introduce the issue of competency-based recruitment. Because in many other countries around the world, before you enter the civil service, you must be tested, for instance, so that you can demonstrate that you have the capacity to do a piece of job. But even when you introduce those reforms in the public sector, it becomes difficult to do it retroactively. So you cannot go back and test somebody that entered the civil service in 1980 or 1990. So sometimes you just pick a start point and say, anyone that is going to come in now, we are going to do a competency-based exam for you. And those exams has to be based on technical or skills that are required, sometimes leadership and all of that. So that's why you see the CSA doing right now, to say before you enter the civil service, you are going to take exam. So that's something Liberia needs to move forward with, that kind of reform. Because that is done to be able to get the people that Dr. George is talking about. Get people who have the skills, who have the competence to be able to fill specific roles, especially in these commissions that we create. Because when you look at the commissions that we create, and then these, like the state-owned enterprises and all of that, these require very specialized skills for people to be able to deliver in these institutions. So you can't just bring anybody to be able to do what is expected of them. So I think there are pieces of reforms that are taking place. But on the public sector side, the challenge we have is that currently Liberia does not have a public sector reform strategy. So whatever Josiah is doing at the CSA and some other institutions are doing, there is no coherent strategy to ask ourselves, what is the public sector that we need 5 years, 10 years from now? Because right now, much of the reform that is happening in the public sector space, people are moving towards data-driven decision making and also digitizing systems in the government. And for that, you need specialized skills like data scientists, statisticians, and all of that, so that they can be able to use this data to inform your decision-making process. But we don't have a strategy on civil service, on public sector reform. So that's a bit of a gap. But with all of the challenges that are there, I think what the government has managed to do is that they've brought back the spirit of getting to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and leave here at 4. A couple of years ago, we didn't have a lot of that. People were going to work just like Susu. Some people will go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the other people go Tuesday, Thursday, and some other days. But I think overall now you can see that people are going to work. But we discussed the details. Like I said, there is no strategy to really be able to lay out the reforms that we need to do for the public sector in the next couple of years.
Dr. Pearson, welcome. You are a fan of the beautiful game called football. And before the players get on the field to deliver the victory, they must be prepared. Each player, depending on his strength, must be positioned in a particular area. I know you used to play number 5. I was number 9. You know, when you look at this government, did it actually set itself up to succeed in terms of personnel, given that it served 12 years before? This is not a rookie government. This is not a rookie party. What will you say?
Thank you, Anthony, for having me today. I want to say hi to Dr. Williams and Mr. Kane. It's a pleasure being on the show with you all. And hi to hi to our audience out there. I think the question you asked is a very important one. Did recruitment process deliver the best results for the caliber of people that we need to serve? I think there will be a mixed basket of response to that, considering the different levels of recruitment that we've seen so far. I think we did see some strategic pick by the president for certain key roles, and at the same time we saw some political appointments, and some of the political appointments were sometimes raise serious eyebrows in the public, amongst the public, and people really critique the government. One instance would be the foreign minister right now as we speak. I think the foreign minister, a good friend. I think she's a smart lady, but there was a lot that was being called into question about her pick for the role, and we didn't see how seriously the president took that concern that was raised by the public. And there, to be very frank, in as much as I am supportive of her in our role, I think some of the concerns that were raised were very legitimate. That should have called for the Senate to have given much attention to it. But again, when you have less than a high school graduate being the evaluator of a proposed college graduate for a job in terms of interview and vetting, that's a whole different ball game altogether. Because to be able to properly interview, you got to know where you're coming from and what you're looking for. If you don't have the prerequisite to do that, and then it's a problem. I will not call anymore. I talk about a less than a high school graduate. I think I try to be diplomatic in that regard, right? But then again, you have this government that is also employed on the basis of ethnicity, and you can attest to the fact that I think over 60% of this current top level management position in the government, especially in the lower level management, immediate lower level, and then the senior level, they are all from what we call the northern belt. All right. Somebody will say they are all Lofians. I won't say they are all Lofian, but I will say they are all from the northern belt, because now we split Lofa into Bapolu and then we get Lofa itself, and then Bomi. All of those people in area are almost from the same ethnic groups. All right, and got diverse ethnic group there. So we can see how that would be a problem if there's not a balance in how they recruit across different ethnicity, which of course the potential of our country depends on the diversity of our people employed. And last but not the least, this is what I would say, and then for my opinion on this question you asked me, Anthony, the educational sector as we know it the past 10, 15 to 20 years is not producing the best results that we needed to produce to get the kind of labor force we need in the country. And I don't think we're doing ourselves any favor by the way we are treating it currently. All right, like Mr. Cannon mentioned, technology is one of the hot subject in the field of education. Up to now, we don't even have a fitting, lab for our kids, right? We don't have fitting classrooms that project the level of technological advancement we see in other countries, even Ghana and other places right by us. So I think there's a lot that we have to do. And last but not the least, a lot of people who are in this position, Anthony, they did not. I don't see a lot of them who've gone through the ranks and files of management and administration and leadership. People are just fresh from politics, hard talk, straight to major offices that you're supposed to come with certain credentials and experience. We don't have that. And when you have those things happening like that, like people that Mark Jabater, so you have assistant minister for urban planning on the radio causing man and causing power at the same time. People whom have been broken down, nobody doing the strategic analysis that Thomas saying for evidence-based leadership decision making. So, and Fatima was there having conversation with people on confidential issues, discussing critical issues that will lead to development matters. And then you come on the air and give some funny statement and put the whole ball game into, we call Labrador message press chakla, right? So these are some of the complications that we have, and I think we can do better.
Thank you. Definitely, we can do better, and that is what the discussion is all about. I will continue with you, Clarence. So my first question here, so what are 2 or 3 concrete achievements you can point to that have made a measurable difference in the lives of ordinary Liberians? And equally, if you don't mind, what are the 2 or 3 most significant failures that you can point to in this government? Because our goal here is to assess the achievements and the failures. Then we can look at how they will do in the next 3 years that's left before election.
I think, to be honest, and Mr. Cummings, my political leader, will say everything is not bad, but the little I can give to this current administration is the fact that they've been able to keep the peace, right? And peace is very significant for a country in terms of the economic environment, whether it will be attractive to investors or not. It depends on the stability of the country. So we understand from the beginning that it was a little shaky. They got off in campaign mode, trying to be so heavy-handed with civilians when they try to do that little demonstration or speak out.
You think it is the government that deserves that credit, or the people that have been patient enough?
I would say the government, because like I used to tell them during the time of those issues, was the way the government respond to the agitation within the public will determine whether it gets escalated or it de-escalated. So I think they have de-escalated the situation by how they respond. So if you look at the last protests that were ever held in Liberia, they came up in a hostile mode, but I guess because of the public intervention and advocacy, they pulled back and they redirected their efforts to instead de-escalating, as compared to what we saw before, the overwhelming of the CDC headquarters and unnecessary tension in the country. At least we saw some differences there. So I think I gave them that, the keeping of the peace. Another thing I would give them a thumbs up for, which I think is also very important, is to an extent, despite of all of the geopolitical tension around the globe, that may be affecting supply chain, affecting goods and services movement, affecting aid to countries that we saw now the drawback in terms of usage and other like the EU drawing back on the financial support in terms of aid. Despite of those challenges, they're having a grip over inflation, and having some grip over the high cost of living in Liberia. I'm not saying it's 100% good, but it will have been worse, right? Now, let me go quickly to the two things I think that I have serious problem with. The issue of the rule of law, for me, is very significant. I think President Boakai and his administration has fronted the rule of law in a way that have caused the country to similarly appear that we have this form of overpowering executive branch of government, right? Where the president feels he can influence anything and do anything, and no one can do anything to him or to the executive branch of government. To the extent that we saw the executive branch of government assign security forces within the national legislature, subdue the national legislature, that representatives who were there to decide budgets for the Liberian people could not even sit in the budget discussion for the passage of the 2025 budget. For me, that was major stuff, even down to the point of removing of the speaker, and to the situation where the Capitol building got burned. That historic building got burned because of, negligence and the greed for power, and how the executive approached the matter by fueling it rather than de-escalating or bridging the gap in the divide. Yes, there is this mindset of separation of roles and functions and separation of powers, but yeah, there's certain coordination of the branches of government. So with proper coordination, I think we could have handled that situation differently. And then we see the same fronting of the rule of law with the arbitrary dismissal of people in tenure position that the president almost every single time lost cases at the Supreme Court and had to pay people for the position that he left, that he suspended them or removed them from, and then pay somebody who he put there to sit in the position. So we're losing on resources that we could have used for something else. And then there's the second point I got. The fronting of our procurement laws, and then the president validating the illegal procurement in the State of the Nation address. I got serious problem with that. So if the president went and maybe he was misled on the 285 yellow machines, right? And then he wrote the legislature trying to clarify what that whole deal was about, and we found out the deal was fraudulent. It would have defrauded the country of $60 million excess in expenditure on that deal. And then only to have it halted and corrected, and the vice president go back and do a better deal, and then he comes in the State of the Nation and tell the people the 285 yellow machine that we were already working on is coming now. No, the 285 yellow machine you started and wrote the legislature about was bogus, was fraudulent, and whoever that was trying to defraud the country should have been prosecuted by the LACC, right? They shouldn't be having a job, and you shouldn't be validating their actions in the State of the Nation. And the same thing goes for the FOIA project, and I don't have to explain because we discussed here in length. And the president went to the FOIA concerning the FOIA project after coming up on national radio ELBC and say he had no knowledge about that. And we saw the contradicting statements, even the ECOWAS trying to say MRU, Manara Yumpo, and they say we got nothing to do with that thing you're doing down there. The president still had the audacity to endorse it and make it part of the State of the Nation address, validating criminality, validating corruption. I think I had a problem with those two things.
Thank you. And Dr. Joshua Williams, we are talking about at least 2 to 3 achievements with measurable impact in the life of ordinary Liberians, and 2 to 3 failures that you think they need to work on.
Well, like I stated in the beginning, thanks to Dr. Pearson for elaborating on some of those successes. And I can go further by saying, for example, we did mention macroeconomic stability. Despite the global economic shock, this government, for example, have been able to reduce inflation from about 10.1% to currently 4% by December 2025. All right, that's major. you talk about benefits to ordinary people. That's more money in the pockets of people. All right. We've done some roads. The government's done some roads to date. They're about what 121,000.87 kilometers of road that has been paved. Meaning more people are able to move around the country. Mr. Billiter from CMC was able to proffer pull out commendations on the government for the excellent road going towards the southeast. That's major. Rural electrification. We were there, Asne, for what? I was there for 5 weeks, and I tell you, yes, I was in the Painesville area, and so Painesville is what it is, near the president, so electricity barely went. But as far as the rest of the country is concerned, so far, records shows that LEC has been able to expand from 33% to about 35%, meaning a projection of about 63,000 new connections. All right. Now, someone will say, well, that's minimal compared to what the entire country looks like. But, let's learn also to celebrate the little successes as we go. That's expansion. In 2.5 years now, we're in the third year. These are some of the successes that we can point to, in addition to elevating our profile and image globally, represented by our elections on the Security Council. Again, how that translates into benefits for ordinary people is another thing, but we're at the level where we're recognized as being on the Security Council. And so I give the government a tap on the back for now. I mean, can they do more? Yes. One of my greatest disappointment was the budget. Despite the success in revenue generation and the projections for the future, I was woefully disappointed in how the new budget and the projections in the new budget cater to ordinary people, cater to agriculture, cater to the key pillars of the arrest agenda. Education, agriculture, health were not catered to. More monies were put in places that will generate for us very little returns. I know security is a critical thing. We just had the situation at the border. Yes, security is critical. But as far as our national security is concerned, we do not have rebels coming into the country. And I don't think our national security should attract the quality of investment it has. I think more important aspects of our national life, health, agriculture, commerce, we need to employ more people. The government wail about not being able to create jobs, but you have the budget. The budget is your magic wand to create jobs, and you do not invest in job creation. And so, yes, those are areas. I mean, on a final note, I think the government is failing in its public relations program. The government is more reactive than proactive, and a lot can be done in terms of reaching the people. There's a lot going on when you get into the country, Dr. Pearson. There's a lot going on when you're on the ground. That's a lot to promote about the government, but very little is heard. Very little is projected out there, and there's a lot that can be done. And so, at the lower ebb of the failure aspect of it, to not even lift the issue of the presidency and government's inaction against likely instances, well, not likely, but proven instances of corruption. The scholarship program spearheaded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the minister should have gone. The president should never, ever be committed to a program and we find out that the program is based on fraud. Whoever pushed the president there should have borne the brunt of the president's wrath. The yellow machines issue. You know, the FOIA project. Those were disappointing periods in terms of the government's fight. Government simply undermined its own self by those actions or her inactions against those instances of graft in government, in the current government. So if you're fighting asset recovery, but you're leaving the stones unturned with people right within your circles, that undermines the process, the objectivity of the process as well. So yeah, I joined Dr. Pearson in criticizing government along those lines. Some heads should have gone to show to the public that yes, government is serious about fighting corruption, but to have retained people in place till now sets the wrong tone.
And that's saying you are an educator. Will you say any success is there to point to in terms of education, or none at all?
I will say this much to you. As an educator, I deliberately shy away from talking education. When
you are well suited to talk education, when you are well suited to talk education, and you're shying away from that.
So it's a double-edged sword for me. You know, we
operate in an environment. When it comes to education, you're the expert, yes. So I will force you to speak.
Exactly. In the president's own message, Anthony, in the president's own message, he pointed to school feeding as a major success. Now, school feeding it's a great thing. It's good for our kids, but we're talking learning outcomes. We're talking teacher quality. We're talking infrastructure improvements. The president pointed to none of those pillars, but school feeding, which is good. Yes, children can learn if they're hungry. But, you know, here again, we have a $1.2 billion budget. How is that budget tailored to meeting the needs of teachers,
investment in education?
Yeah, learning outcomes, you know. Government, from what I gather on the field, they're going to build like 100 schools. They've projected to building 100 schools. And for me, can we improve the ones we already have first, then begin to expand in areas where we need to? You know, Thomas is the economist. If you know, there's economies of scale. Why don't we improve what we have and maybe add 2-3 rooms to what we have and then move on? There are others. I mean, the University of Liberia is a classic case in point. The university is a classic case in point. I mean, the deteriorating conditions of the University of Liberia speaks volume to how much attention, how much focus this government has on education. You know, and it's a challenge. At the university, it's worse at the secondary and secondary and elementary levels. You know, post-tertiary, not post-tertiary, but pre-tertiary levels. And so it's a challenge with education. The guys across the street, many of them, unfortunately, that's what our constitution requires, that the only thing you need is you reach a certain age and you must be resident in a community. You can be voted in. There's no other qualification that's required. And so the folks that are there are appropriating for themselves rather than for the sectors that are critical to regenerating and renewing our society: education, health, agriculture, commerce. And so those institutions or those sectors are left underfunded generally.
That, you know, I'm glad you spoke to that, but I will be blunt. It's a monumental failure when it comes to education. The government has failed miserably. And the University of Liberia case is an example of that. If you look at what is being placed in the budget for the University of Liberia, might not even be enough in terms of the physical environment, the infrastructure. It's not even enough, but that is what we have there, right? Then you look to government schools. We've done shows here. We show you schools in the counties. I sent my reporter in Mangibi. There's a school building that has no doors, just the roof and the stakes around it, right? We know government does not have all the money, but when we look at what they're putting in the budget in terms of education, it tells the story. Tom, we are looking at 2 to 3 achievements by the government with measurable impact in the lives of ordinary Liberians, and at least 2 to 3 areas where the government fail and that need to make more effort as we head into their third year.
I will try not to repeat much of what has already been put out there. I think the issue of macroeconomic stability has been mentioned. Yes, inflation is down to around 4%, the closing quarter of 2025, which is very good. But one thing I want to point is that the economy is actually expanding gradually. Because if you look at the recent forecast that came up in terms of the growth of the economy, it has increased from around 4% at the close of last year. We are expected this year to grow by 5.1%, which shows an expansion of the economy. And every time the economy grows, there are benefits that come with it. The sectors are getting bigger. Investment might be one reason why the growth is coming. It could come because of government spending, because of the size of the budget increasing. And eventually you will see that jobs will be created. Because for instance, if you look at what is happening, let's take for instance the company that got this PPP arrangement to be able to build the roads. The company that is building the road from St. Paul Bridge to Bowater side and then building the road from Mendekoma to Vonjama. I think over the past 2-3 weeks, they were recruiting for a long list of people. I think they said they are looking for around 1,250 people to hire. So they're looking for engineers, they're looking for procurement people, logistics people, and all of that. So you will see that jobs will be created as a result of that investment that has come in. And that is going to contribute to growth. So growth is one good thing that every time we hear that it's going up is a good news, because every time the economy contracts, like when growth comes from 5.1% to 4%, it's like it's closing the space for job creation. It's closing the space for livelihood. So I just wanted to highlight that on the growth side. There are some of the things that have happened. It will have impact, but it will take time for the returns to come. But there are institutional foundations that have been established. One of the things I want to highlight is the issue of the National Standard Lab. So since the Civil War ended, and I'm not sure if we had it before the Civil War, there has been no National Standard Lab in Liberia. Every country, most countries have these National Standard Labs to be able to test the product that you bring into the country. So for instance, if you are going to be bringing frozen food, you are going to be bringing other commodities into the country, they need to be tested so that we know whether the quality that you are bringing is not harmful to our citizens or whether the quality that you are bringing is really to that level. Because in many instances, when people produce goods in other countries, they got different class. You got class 1, you got class 2, you got class 3. So quite recently, the National Standard Lab was officially opened. I think the EU has a project that supported it. I think UNIDO also provided some support to it. So moving forward, we have that capacity now to be able to control what commodities come to our country. And this is important because it also links to health. That's why you see many people passing in Liberia, the stomach jaw growing, both men and women, because of all of these substandard things that we are just inputting into the country and our citizens are consuming it. So that's something very important. The other institutional framework that has been put in place, which I think is critical, you might not see the benefit this year or next year, but in the years ahead, is the tourism authority. For many years, we spoke about it in that country. It did not happen until this administration made sure that it has been established. Tourism has been removed from the Ministry of Information, Culture, and Tourism previously. They are now an authority by themselves. I think they got around $2 million or $3 million in the budget, and they've started to do some groundwork. So eventually, when tourism starts to pick up, it will contribute to growth. It will also contribute to job creation. I will also want to mention the decentralization because earlier we were talking about the issue of governance. There is some bit of work that is happening in that space, but there are still it got some limitations to the law itself that they are trying to implement. You see, they have transitioned the Ministry of Internal Affairs to the Ministry of what? Local government. So there is some effort to be able to do a bit of decentralization work. All of the counties now have a county development agenda. When they develop the AAID, they also develop it for the counties. And if you go to the budget, for instance, they provide some money for counties to implement their own projects. They are providing some resources, even I think at the district level, which contravenes the Local Government Act because districts are now local governments. But there are some resources that are going for them to be able to implement some projects at that level. Those things will create some job at the local level. But like I keep saying, decentralization, the problem is, and it goes back to the point we are talking about the national institutions. The national institutions need to focus more on policy formulation, on strategy formulation. And then service delivery can be handled by local governments. Like what you were asking about, Dr. Williams. There is no way we are going to improve education service delivery when the Ministry of Education sits in Monrovia and they are responsible to renovate all of the schools in Grand Crew. When does that information come from Grand Crew and reach to the Ministry of Education, to the minister level, to say that the breeze that came last night, it took away the zinc from the primary school? When will the ministry be able to respond from Monrovia? So that's why service delivery, mostly in many countries that have decentralized system, is the responsibility of local governments. Primary education, primary health. The local governments are closer to the people. They have information advantage. They will be able to communicate. People can go to the market from their villages. If they go to Barclayville, they will be able to get to the superintendent office and tell you that our school has a problem. But they will never be able to come to Monrovia to provide that information. So that's why we need to get to a point where these basic services that are needed for the people, that are critical, health, education, water and sanitation, fire, like the National Fire Service, see where they are. So if there is fire in Maryland, who responds to it? When all of the trucks are in Monrovia. So that's why our governance system needs to be really reevaluated and rearranged in such a way that we can deliver services better. On the areas that I don't think we are making a lot of progress, the limitations is the institutional framework for planning. And this is well established. The Ministry of Finance, I think in their current strategic plan that they have developed, I think the thinking they had was to elevate planning to a department because right now it's combined with budget. So you have one deputy minister for planning and budget. And since the Ministry of Planning and Economic Affairs was merged with the Ministry of Finance, planning has just gone away. We just do this 5-year strategic development plan. And it's like that's all the planning that we need to do. So you don't have sectoral plans. The infrastructure work that public work is doing, how does it link to the work that water and sewer is doing? All of these things need to be interlinked. How is it linked to the work that the Ministry of Post and Telecommunication is using to build the IT infrastructure for service delivery? Because even when you come to public financial management, you come to service delivery, they need that IT background for your PFM systems and everything to work. So I think planning, we are not doing well with planning. Jobs is a major failure. Every time the president calls for a cabinet meeting, he complains about it. In one of the previous cabinet meetings, they said they were going to develop a strategy for job creation. We don't know how far they've gone with that strategy. It has not come. So job creation is something that the government really needs to pay attention to. Program-based budgeting is in the AARD as an intervention area. The government has not started it to really be able to make sure that the resources that go into the budget are dedicated to programs that are well defined, that the results are very clear. But that has not been done. So I think these are some of the areas. There's a lot of other things, but these are some of the areas that I really wanted to highlight. On the revenue side, they are doing well. LRA is doing well. The VAT introduction is going to happen next year. They are training businesses now to get them familiar with the new tax regime because we are moving from goods and services tax to VAT. LRA is doing well. One of the things that LRA also needs to do is to make sure that they can increase their capacity and increase their manpower so that they can be able to collect taxes just beyond Monrovia and the concessions and go down to the county level to make sure that everybody that needs to pay tax that they can pay, because these are equity issues. There shouldn't be someone doing business in Sino and they are not paying tax, and somebody in Monrovia is paying their tax. So LIRA actually needs to expand, and they need the resources to be able to do that.
Thank you. Dr. Pearson, let's move to the fight against corruption. 3 years in now and looking back, what is your assessment? Is this administration fighting corruption as much as they needed to and they communicated that they would? Unmute, please.
Thank you, Anthony. Look, I think this government has failed miserably when it comes to corruption. You don't even have to look hard to know that. If you ask me, I'll go further by saying this government is more corrupt than the we administration. More corrupt, because the level of corruption has happened in a short amount of time under this administration. If they continue in this direction and this trend, by the end of 6 years, they would have been the corruption king kong for all other administrations that have ever come to power. And let me tell you why. The reason I'm saying this is similar to what I said previously. One of the things that deterred corruption is the institutions that you build that will serve as a watchdog to deter people from being corrupt. And one of those institutions is the LACC. The LACC, in my opinion, as I speak, is compromised. It's very much compromised. Besides the LACC, the Public Procurement Commission, the PPCC area that's all preside over procurement process in our country. That institution also, I wouldn't say it is corrupt, because what I hear the director say most of the time is that, look, I don't know about that procurement. All of the major procurement, they say, I don't know about that procurement. Before the legislature, I don't know about that procurement. So it appears to me that he is not happy with what is going on, but he doesn't want to trouble the waters and maybe lose his job in the process. Yes, he's strong on the fact that I've heard a couple of times him saying he did not sign off on stuff, because if he tells you he did not sign off on it, it means he pushed back on it. And there are instances where he came publicly and said he pushed back on some stuff, and even though it went ahead. So I won't say it is compromised. I would just say he is not being allowed to do his job. In his last hearing at the legislature, I saw frustration in him. I saw the frustration in his department. He didn't seem happy about what he was discussing, as per how his area is being undermined. And to compound the situation, we look at the response of the president from Supreme Court's rulings, right, on issues that the president maybe should have taken more seriously, and then he renege on them, or he just overlooked it completely. Like, for instance, like if the president goes to remove this person from office to put someone favorable to his party that he says he gets confidence in working with, and the Supreme Court said, listen, this person should not be removed, because the removal process don't meet the benchmark, and then the president pays this person off with the Liberian poor money and maintain his preferred candidates. It's a form of corruption, because what he's doing is that the checks and balance in the system that should deter us losing those revenue, like Thomas saying, revenue base is expanding, whether it's through taxation, increased taxation on the Liberian people. Yeah, we're collecting the money, but we can't be wasting it at the same time. And the fact that we're not strengthening the institutions, and the president is not giving them the leverage to do their job properly as the watchdog of the society over corruption, at the end of the day, people get emboldened to be corrupt. Let me give you one practical example, Anthony. The president is told about 285, and I will not leave this in 285 yellow machines or F-moving machines, whatever it is, but machines, 285 that would have cost around maybe between $62 to $64 million. The president writes the legislature in confidence of this person advised to him. And then that whole deal backfires and it comes down to about $24 million. So the president may have saved around $60 million. Somebody was attempting to defraud the country. What did the president do about that? No action. Leave that. Let's go to the 4-year structure. The 4-year structure was projected around the same, I think 10 million or whatever the case is, $10 million. President said he didn't know nothing about this. This thing, for almost 3 to 4 months, it went in cycles. Nobody could say nothing. President went on national radio and said, Lord, you know what? I don't even know about that thing. But now I finally got to know about it. And then he endorsed it. For us to hear in the corners, in cycles, that there were SOEs who did not meet their quota to the national budget that funding that 4-year project. The president has not clarified that. Neither has the government provided a justification, clear justification as to how that whole thing happened. It was validated in the State of the Nation. What am I saying here? Not only that corruption in the legislature and now in the executive branch of government, rampant. Other people believe even in the judiciary, it is also rampant, but it is not being checked. And the structures to check them are not being given the leverage they need to do the job. That makes us to be in a very difficult position. And I think the president has failed tremendously in this regard. We have lost a lot of money from this respect.
Thank you. Dr. Williams, the fight against corruption is key. And you know what we have as a nation, talking about money to carry on all the development that we need to carry on, not much. So managing what we have and using those resources for the internal purposes and even getting our priorities right, those are key, in terms of, fighting corruption. And then there's a whole era of transparency, and, documentation, budget, reports, budget performance reports, all of these things. How is the government doing in this fight?
Well, as far as corruption is concerned, there's been, and I'll be pretty blunt to say, a lot of what's happened is superficial. I listened to the LACC chair speak at a press conference, I think it was yesterday, and I was disappointed. I was disappointed with the quality of reporting from the LACC in regards to and justification on some of the acquittals that they've had and the reason why the LACC isn't as effective and prosecutorial as it ought to be, given all of the powers that they have. I mean, one of the things that the previous government did was to give prosecutorial powers to the LACC, so the LACC can prosecute. I heard the chair lamenting how the courts, I think it's Criminal Code C, how the court docket is so full and they're unable to prosecute as much as they should. And so the focus of the LACC is going to be on public education and what have you. I was disappointed with what I heard. Given the magnitude and the corruption challenge in the country, I would have loved to hear an LACC that's more proactive. But what I hear oftentimes is we're reacting to and living up to the challenges that are before us. We don't have a specialized code. That's why we can't do what we need to do. Those are lame excuses. The LACC can even strengthen its own internal investigation mechanism to ensure that with the quasi powers that they have internally, even before they go to court, the LSCC can investigate internally and call on the Justice Ministry to hold people in prison while the courts, they await a court date. But as it is, again, I wouldn't say they're compromised because there's no evidence from my standpoint to say that. But the commission lacks capacity. That's the intellectual way to put it. They lack capacity. They need greater capacity, and by capacity I mean manpower, not just financial, but manpower to be more effective. I go further to say that I think having the LSCC and the asset recovery, those parallel institutions, that should actually be one institution. It's also a problem beneath undermining the fight against corruption, in addition to the executive's own inability to deal with the issues, the current issues. It's not enough to go after the past, but how are we dealing with the current situation? How effective are we? And Dr. Pearson and I just, laid out at least 3 instances where some head should have gone. In other environments, they have at least some sacrificial lambs should have been put on the altar. Nobody was sacrificed in the process, and that's not good. And so, as far as the fight on corruption is concerned, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot that can be done, but there's very little being done at the level of the executive, at the level of the LSCC, that's part of the executive, at the level of the judiciary. A lot more can be done, but it calls for concerted effort, coordinated effort between the executive and the judiciary. Not to even mention the legislature, because there's a whole lot of instances of corruption on that end as well. And we talk about budget performance report, but how can we talk about budget performance report when internally, the legislature hasn't been able to even audit its own self? And so that's another problem. To whom much is given, much is expected. They say you should come. When you come to the table to talk equity, your hands got to be clean, right? If the legislators' hands are not clean, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah, Tom, I want you to speak more to the reporting aspect of it, the transparency aspect of it, in terms of the execution of the budget. That is key. The laws are there, as you well know. The PMVN law and all of these laws, these are all instruments that are made to bring about transparency and accountability so that there can be a minimized level of corruption. And I'm not sure if much is being done in that area. Can you speak to that?
Thank you, Anthony. Before I answer this question, Dr. Williams spoke about something earlier. Let me add to it.
Mm-hmm.
When USAID left Liberia and then eventually Sweden closed, Sweden later on decided to leave.
Mm-hmm.
My point was, at that point in time, my thinking was the government was going to turn back to her citizens to say, here the situation we are in. We're getting free money from people. They were helping us to be able to fund development, to deliver services to you. USAID was doing a lot in education, in health, in agriculture, and all of that. But now they've gone. Where we are now, we have to take our own responsibility. The same way we can say back when we need to tie all about. Like, the way the woman can do, they can look for rope. They tie it very good. I thought that was an opportunity for the government to actually engage the citizens and say, this is where we are. We go through this storm, and now we have to fund ourselves. At a certain point, they launched some town hall engagement. The Ministry of Information said they were going to have these town hall engagements with citizens. I think they had one at the ministerial complex, and then they had one in Nimba.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah, in Nimba.
I thought that was an opportunity to really be able to engage with citizens on taxation issues, on governance issues, on natural resource governance and all of that, so that we can be able to do things by ourselves. And the only way we do it is for us to be able to pay our fair taxes. But I think that opportunity was lost. The government just went through that 2024 ended, and it was really overtaken by the removal of the speaker at that point in time. Nothing would happen until Kufa was gone. And by the time Kufa was gone, things had stabilized a little bit and we moved forward. Also, right now, the government is trying to fund two of the binding constraints that we have in our country, which is rural and electricity. And these are capital intensive investment when you want to build roads. I think they are close to securing the financing for Banga all the way to Mendekoma. The one going to Harper, I think financing is already secure. They are looking for money for electricity. When you fund these binding constraints, like you keep hearing the people say, but how does it really benefit us? Because it's taking away a lot of resources in the national budget. So you have to communicate with the citizens. Let them understand that these investments that you are doing today is the foundation that you are laying for growth in the future, which will create jobs and all of that. The Minister of Finance, he has the press conferences. I mean, he's delivering the message, but I don't think that message is really getting across to people in the counties. You need to talk to them to say, okay, you have to wait in the next 2-3 years when we build a road, we bring electricity, then these are the other benefits that you will get. But I think that whole communication piece of it, to just feel that Tuesday, Thursday, you go to MICAT and have a press conference and you're talking to the whole Liberia, that's not communicating with the citizen. So I think that's a real lost opportunity. On your issue about corruption and all of that, I think the statement that, okay, this government is more corrupt.
And Tom, before you get to the corruption thing, you and me place emphasis on local government because it brings about efficiency in service delivery. You gave a very beautiful example. Someone in Grand Crew, the superintendent can respond to a leaking roof at a school, but now you expect the principal to come all the way to Moravia before they can see the education minister. They may not see, right? So the communication aspect you're also talking about, right? It can also be decentralized,
right?
Because these institutions, the finance ministry, they should have structures in the country that can communicate further to the people. It will save money, because if you have to move the finance minister from one country to another, it's a lot of money. But if the policy as a communication is developed and then communicated to the local government, they can pass it on. It will cost less.
Definitely. And the structures are in place. All of these counties have county information officers. But do they know what is happening at the national level? Are we also getting information from that ground level? When was the last time you saw a communication officer for Grand Jide County going to MICAT to go and say, this is what is happening in Grand Jide, this is what we are doing, this is what the citizens are saying? So it's like just the big sharks, they go and talk, and then the other person, they get a microphone, they talk, and then they go back. So I think MICAT is not really doing well to be able to communicate the government programs so that citizens can be on board to be able to move forward. So that whole communication piece is not working at all. And until you engage the citizens, you are going to have some pushbacks. Look at the land issue that is happening now. There's a lot of crisis in the land area. They need to pay attention to resolving that. You have to have community engagements to be able to solve those problems. So on back to the corruption issue, the Transparency International, they do the TR transparency, the corruption index every year. 2024, I think Liberia score out of 100 was 27. 2025, it went to 28. So there's a little bit of an improvement that is happening over there. The challenge with the corruption issue, the others have discussed about it, is on the audit side, there is improvement taking place. The GSE is doing a wide range of audits. And one of the things the GSE is doing now is that they have a special unit that they call, I think, audit recommendation follow-up. So they do the audit and then they recommend to you, do this, improve your financial management system. Maybe you need a software to be able to help you. You don't have people in place to be able to produce the financial reports that are needed. When the recommendations are done and the GSE audit reports come up, they go and make follow-up to see whether those recommendations are actually implemented. So I think on the other side, there is improvement that is taking place. In the space also, you have the Internal Audit Secretariat. Because previously, until 2012, 2013, we did not have Internal Audit Secretariat. We have only the GSE, and the GSE only does post-audit. That means the money is spent, and then they come and check. When somebody had misappropriated money all the way back in 2018 and 2019, at that point in time, GSE is not able to address that problem. They will only tell you that the money is gone. So that's why we established the Internal Audit Agency. So they have their own piece. The way they are organized is that they are deployed into the different government ministries and agencies. So when you go through all of your activities that you need to do to spend government money, it has to go through these IAA people. And they say, okay, you can move ahead, you are compliant. But what happens in some instances is that these people get deployed from IAA, they go to the ministries and agencies, they see themselves more as part of the entity where they have gone, and they are deployed. So they are the ones that even tell the people, oh, they want to correct when you do it, that problem, so you got to do it this way. But they're supposed to be the checkpoint so that they can stop everything that is happening. Because the issue with corruption in many instances is weaknesses in the public financial management system. It's either somebody not following the procurement regulation, or they are not following the cash management regulation, or they are not following some kind of procedure. So the more you have corruption in the public space, it comes back to the PFM system to say the PFM system is weak, and how can we improve it? Because when the PFM system works perfectly, then the issue of corruption will be actually minimized. You don't have LACC running behind people. You don't have GSE and others running behind people. So we have all of these accountability institutions. The sad part of it, see the code of conduct. The person who was heading the how they call that institution?
Ombudsman.
The
Office of
ombudsman.
Yeah.
Ombudsman who's supposed to make sure that there are ethics in government. They may taking money from his special assistant. When they met his salary at the end of the month, he says, send some to me through mobile money. So you sit as the head of the ombudsman, and you are violating the very law that they gave you position to be able to resolve. And then you see all of the challenges that we have in the public space. The other challenge we have with corruption in the public space is that every time an audit is done, those audits go to the Public Accounts Committee that is in the legislature. They have to review it and then make recommendations to the president to say, okay, we see liability in this other audit report. This person should be held accountable. Or this other person, maybe it was a minimal issue. Let the person go. When the new administration came, Senator Cornell and then the PAC, they started having meetings, they started reviewing audit report. At a certain point, they just go missing. And if the PAC in the legislature does not work well, GSE has their stopping point. All these agencies have where they can stop. And so they will be part of audit reports, but there will be no more to take action on them. So that PAC in the legislature really needs to work. On the LACC side, it's a bit sad. There are some positive news. They have, I think, prosecuted some people for the list just money, the census that we did in 2022. Those people, they managed to nail them down. But again, like Dr. Williams said, 2021, 2022, LACC was given prosecutorial power. Now they have it. They cannot use that as an excuse. So I think they need to move forward with a lot of prosecutions. And in the current administration, when people do wrong, they are just being asked to leave the position. They just suspend them. Some people, they just remove them from position without taking that next step of getting to the level of prosecution. So I think that's where the challenge is actually.
And Dr. Pearson, I want you to pick from where Thomas stopped, right? You are aware we've seen a lot of resignations. We've seen a lot of suspension. And most of the resignation, especially for suspension, that coming from the office of the president, always about some allegation of corruption. And so the president will suspend. And sometimes there will be investigation, there will be recommendation. In the case of the ombudsman Thomas just talked about, there was an investigation done. And we have the report on the desk of the president, and now the ombudsman has resigned. More than likely, that's what will happen. You remember David Eto Brown Lasana, current boss of NEC, was suspended for reasons the government saw legitimate enough to have suspended her. And I don't know what happened. She came back, and many other suspensions in the past. All right, suspension of people at LTA, what you call central bank, and then the government passed behind. I think you mentioned that, right? You suspended these people, and you said there'll be investigation. Those investigations were done, and they just stopped there. We never got a report. Neither did we go to prosecution. And so my question to you is: these suspensions, are they helping, or are they not? Are they making the matter worse?
Anthony, I think any suspension or any dismissal on allegations of corruption and actual corruption that is proven is healthy for the country, right? Because it set precedents for would-be corruptors. But I don't think this government is honest when it comes to fighting corruption. I think a lot of the people who will say they resign are people who want to, who doing it out of their own integrity. And then the ones who President Boakai target would be the ones who go to court and win President Boakai because there's not enough evidence to prove the case. And then they get put back on the job or pay off, right? So I think majority of what I've seen with the whole thing about corruption is politically motivated, in my opinion. Whether it relates to the legislators who took money to remove the speaker and nothing came out of it, the LCC remained mute on it, or it is the late, peace be to his ashes, Crispy, who took $500,000 to support the president's own venture, and nothing came out of the president said nothing. The FOIA project, the Yellow Machine project, and many other issues. All right, the president keep quiet because he supports it. I'm one of those who believe the president does not take action and he's aware of the matter, then he supports it. But let me go further to say something Conan mentioned. I just think it's important to mention it. He mentioned about the rules. Look, I tell people a lot of, most of the time that I'm very concerned about the level of corruption in Liberia right now under President Boakai. I think they are more corrupt than the we are administration. Our public works minister, when given $20 million, right?
Yes, I believe it was
budget, 20 million, 2024. He went and squandered that money doing month-to-month road conditioning. And then he went to the legislature and then asked the legislators for forgiveness on camera. And then they said, okay, Abacha said, okay, we forgive the man. That man go and sin no more. Can you imagine that? But here's my concern when I mentioned that, right? In all the bypassing the procurement processes, we got the National Road Fund, Anthony. The National Road Fund supports majority of the road maintenance and local roads, feeder roads construction, right? When was the last time that we here now, and those of us in Liberian President Boakai understand the value of roads, have been very, very stringent to say, I want to hear about the National Road Fund's progress on an annual basis, maybe on a quarterly basis. What is the National Road Fund generating? Because it's supposed to get 0.25 cents or 25 cents on every gallon of fuel. So in every gallon of fuel sold in Liberia, we should get 25 cents for the National Road Fund. What is the status of the road funds? Do we have maybe a public bulletin that is showing us the progression of the National Road Funds in terms of what is accumulating and what projects is it being directed to? Thomas mentioned here, evidence-based decision-making and leadership. What can we see that level of transparency? No. So isn't it the same road fund that we have big noise about in the house of in the house there that somebody credited from the road fund, he put it back, somebody stole money from there? Why is that road fund so quiet? If even it is being used for the right reasons, we need more transparency. So Thomas mentioned about road construction being important and the money takes a big portion of the national budget. A lot of the monies that we do the major roads for are from multilateral loans. Correct, Thomas? It's not directly from the national budget. It's multilateral loan. So we're getting money from the African Development Bank. We're getting money from World Bank. These are loans that we're supposed to pay back. And now I'm concerned again about our debt and how we're doing our debt management. A lot of the time, every time we do the national budget, when you see the budget reflection, like what happened in the past, the actual spending, they will say, oh, they're paying back debt. but yet the debt is increasing while they say the servicing the debt at the same time. And then we are not able to clearly see for government to tell us, listen, this is what the debt is really benefiting the Liberian people, concerning. This is what the debt is spent on. The actual what debt is accruing against. I want more. I'm not saying they may not have records. I'm not saying they may not be accounting. I'm not saying they may not be accounting for it. I want to see more transparency in those because it's going to impact the future generations. We want to know how the future generation is going to pay for those excesses. I'm concerned about that.
Thank you.
Anthony, can you give me 30 seconds?
Please, go ahead.
I think we need to checkmate some of these things. The issue with the public work minister is, when the administration took over, the budget that was before the House was a budget submitted by the CDC government. And so when the administration took over, the legislature says, since you are a new administration and you have your own priorities, what we will do is we will send the budget back to you so that you can reallocate to your priorities. So it was at that point in time when the instrument has gone back to the executive. At that point, the Minister of Public Work was already going ahead because they really wanted to make sure that the 100 days that the president had pronounced, they could do something about it. So he went ahead to be able to engage the contractors. So the issue that the legislature had with the Minister of Public Work was that he committed, because in the PFM law, before you commit the government, a budget has to be passed, and there is a line item in the budget. So they have to pass the budget, for instance, to say, we give the Ministry of Education $2 million. Before the Ministry of Education can go to anybody and say, come and build a primary school for me. So that was the issue the legislature had with the Minister of Public Work. But the Minister of Public Work at that point in time had actually written the Ministry of Finance to say, we want to go ahead. And the Ministry of Finance said that we are going to put money in the budget for you to cover what you are doing, so you can go ahead. So it was on that technical basis that the minister apologized. He did not apologize that he missed you the money. And the $22 million that was used then, those contracts are still ongoing. Some of the road maintenance work that is happening at the county level for cars to be able to go to Maryland and other places, it is still that $22 million that is being used. It wasn't used in 1 year.
Thank you. And Dr. Williams, let's talk about appropriation. It is key. For far too long now, as a country, we all cry about recurring expenditure, always about 70-80% of the budget. And what is left for the PSI has always been relatively low. So don't we agree with me? Most of our development projects, and Dr. Pearson mentioned it also, are being funded through loans and contribution from other countries. For example, we have Japan now that is giving us $16 million grant, and to be used to fix the road from Gabriel Tucker Bridge, I believe, all the way to St. Paul Bridge. I believe it's the same Japanese people that gave up money to fix the road from Freeport to Red Light. And, and all of these major roads we have, even the ministerial complex, our little terminal at the airport, other people are giving all money for development projects in our country. It's said that our budget has been relatively low, so the best we can do is to just spend it on on running the government. Priorities. Talk to me.
Again, it's all about vision. Anthony, we were fortunate to have lived at a time when, first of all, no country generally lives just subsisting on its own resources. But significantly, however, a government with vision can ensure that whatever little revenue that's generated can work well for the interests of its people if appropriated properly. So compare government since, I'll go back to even the Samuel Doe era, Samuel Doe till now. And those of us, I mean, someone will argue you were little, so how do you know whether or not Talbot was borrowing? Talbot did have a lot of bilateral friends, but foreign direct investment at the time was pretty high. And so we had a lot of investments. I mean, I lived in the Gardnersville area, and so that whole belt were private businesses. You know, they were private businesses. Again, I think we've entered a regime since the 1980s when the U.S., in her attempt to shut the mouth of Samuel Doe, pumping over $500 million over the 8 or so years that he stayed in office, or 10 years he stayed in office. But, you know, successive governments after that have always run. Maybe the only government that got very little, if any, was the interim government. Those interim governments got nothing. They had to rely on whatever little revenue they could scratch up here and there. But every elected government, including that of Charles Taylor, I will say also, may not have gotten as much as other governments because of his peculiar situation at the time.
Yeah.
You know, but since Madam Salif, we've basically entered a regime of begging, and so begging has become our national strategy for undertaking programs that should otherwise and could otherwise be financed by the little revenue we're generating. We definitely don't necessarily need money from the Japanese to fix the Gardnersville Road. How big was that road? We could have done it in phases every year, do a phase of it. By now, we probably would have been boasting of doing the roads ourselves from Freeport to Gibraltar Bridge. Again, the war, and I'll put it back to the war has exacerbated Liberians' impressions and expectations of self. We've become professional beggars. We think it's okay to economically indebt the current and future generations of the country to develop the country. And then at the end of the day, these monies come into the country and you don't see where it goes. So what's the essence of the borrowing? If we're borrowing not to expand the economy necessarily, but we're borrowing to pay, it just doesn't tie in. And so, you know, we need to step back from the borrowing and begin to be more strategic in how we generate revenue. Thomas was talking about the things that LRA could do in expanding the revenue basket. And that's totally true. Real estate taxes is one of those areas where we're really low at in terms of adequately generating revenue from those sources. We see a lot of these corrupt homes. And, you know, the fight against corruption can be tied to expanding our tax collection, because some of the homes that are built without the LCC investigating how monies were collected to build those homes, imposing adequate taxes on those homes could generate a lot of money, but could also at the same time undermine people stealing from government and thinking they can build the kind of structures that we see around the country, you know? But yeah, real estate tax revenue generation is another weakness on the part of the LRA and the government in terms of expanding the revenue base. But yeah, there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot that can be done. There are lots of opportunities to continue to expand the economy, but also opportunities to curtail the continuous borrowing and indebting our people for future generations. It's just unproductive.
And that you are right. And the way we're proceeding, I think is costing us too much. I did a research and I was curious about intelligence spending in Liberia. We know our country. No one is targeting us right now. The kind of money that is being spent on intelligence can be diverted to the key areas we're talking about, for example, roads, right? I did a research on the 2026 budget. Intelligence alone, just intelligence, not national security as a whole, just intelligence aspect of it is 80 million. The shocking thing here that is that for the Financial Intelligence Agency, they put 1.8 million just for intelligence. For the police intelligence budget is 1.5 million. The Drugs Enforcement Agency alone, they said we need intelligence to fight drugs. So 1.5 million. Here's the interesting part. LACC, they put money there that's never been there before for intelligence. How much? 800,000 United States dollars. Then you come to immigration. They put money there for intelligence. And that is 790,000 US dollars. Then you come to the Executive Protection Service. They put money there for intelligence, 600,000. The one that shocked me the most was Ministry of Information. There has never been there before. They put money there for what? Media intelligence. What that is, I have no clue. 400,000. And now, the National Fire Service, they put money there for intelligence that's never been in the budget before. 400,000. You think they stop? The National National Commission on Small Arms, they put money there for intelligence, 375,000. And then the Ministry of State, just for intelligence, 220,000. And then the Ministry of State again, they put another media intelligence there. So there's media intelligence or money for media intelligence at the Ministry of State and at the Ministry of Information. Those figures were never there. Just intelligence alone amounted to 80 million. And now that Japanese people giving up money to face the most critical pieces of road in Monrovia from Freeport, the nation's gateway. Why, if these people don't give up money? And we all know that road has been bad from Ellen Johnson selling time. Terrible. We as a people could not make a decision that will cut down this budget and find this 60 million instead of people giving us to face this road. What is fire service doing with 400,000 for intelligence? Intelligence for what? To know when a fire, somebody will what? Do what? To put a place on fire? Is that why you need $400,000 for intelligence? The Ministry of Information. Why Jeremy Pierre need media intelligence for? What is media intelligence, by the way? To know who, maybe Anthony here is coming live, he will say this or what? I don't get it. So the way they are spending the money is bad. We got schools that don't have textbooks. You are an educator, you talk about labs. Just put a little computer and put internet in all the government schools in Monrovia. The $80 million can do that at all the MCSS schools. Just a little Chromebook with maybe a Starlink, so that our little ones can go in a little lab there and access the internet for the first time and get a computer for the first time. But you put the money there to fire service, 400,000 for intelligence. Maybe somebody come and put my house on fire, so let's get intelligence. How will you spend that money? Dr. Pearson, you need to help me here on the intelligence money thing. It really getting to me.
You know, Anthony, look, I think I should say in all honesty, and I tell people this because in conversation with Mr. Cummings, one of the things he would say is that don't criticize something that when you get it tomorrow, you yourself will do. Like the United Party people did it. When you criticize the thing, then when you get it now, you start doing the thing, they say, well, my man, you are here criticizing the thing. Yeah, the same thing you're doing there. So look, I think premium should be placed on intelligence for many different reasons. Premium should be placed on intelligence for many different reasons. There's a growing threat within the the Sahel region. Of course, Liberia is a part of it. When it come to terrorism and a lot of jihad activities, and there's a lot that goes into what they call counterterrorism, whether it is financial tracking or it is intelligence in many different forms and factions. So I don't have the back end information as to why those decisions are made on intelligence, but I know intelligence is a hard kick now in the sub-region and in the world. Especially so that Liberia is part of the Interpol system. So I wouldn't go there. What I would say is that I'm just concerned, like you are concerned, that are we budgeting to the best of our ability so that we are able to meet those demands and at the same time meet our own national demands that are very important, because like Tom mentioned the issue about we are migrating to VAT, right? Mm-hmm. So VAT is where, technically speaking, a lot of people will not say aloud, is double taxing as the product moves within the different team or the different supply chain, and the chains shape and gains value, so whatever way it is progressing, you pay tax on that goods. Now, people will try to cover it up by saying, "Oh, you know what happened? It's the same as the GST have first. You pay one time at the port, you know, maybe is the income tax, whatever the case is, that's all the government tax on, and then you pay your tax for running your shop and things like that." But let me be honest with Liberian people here. The tax that Thomas is talking about, he can come and clarify later. But I've been looking into it, right? If, say, for instance, you import raw cement product, you bring a raw cement product in the country, that cement product that you bring in the country is going to be taxed. Thomas can correct me later on. It is taxed. Your importation is taxed. If that cement product change value along what to extent it gets to me, it's also going to be taxed. At what point it changes its value, right? Maybe let me just assume, let me put it that way. Say maybe this guy bringing in cement to just make the one in the bag, it is taxed. When that cement transition into black, when you buy in the black, it is taxed. That's what I'm saying. If I'm wrong, Thomas can correct me. I just giving us, I want to keep it as simple as that. But that's not my major concern. But yes, my major concern. My major concern is this. When you want to bring your tax base on ordinary people who are already living in poverty, and so then my major concern here is that you don't want to have a situation in which your economic strategy become repressive or regressive. I will use the word regressive. Meaning, in as much as you feel you want to improve your tax base, you want to collect more taxes, it's going to harm the minimum income of the people, ordinary people. So for instance, if my salary today is not even allowing me to pay my rent, send my children to school, pay my children to go to work and everything, when you improve, you bring in the value-added system, value-added tax system, the commodity get as the value change along the value chain. And when you add into my expense, and for a poor country like Liberia, Thomas, please help me answer the question. Are we helping Liberian people by burdening them with taxes, or should we invest more in the private sector? Should we broaden the private sector? Should we focus on broadening the private sector, increase the level of employability for our people coming from AU and other technical vocational training programs to increase the purchasing power, or we should be looking to take more money from them to give a lawmaker bigger salary, SOE's director and things, bigger salaries? Is that what we're talking here? Thomas, I want you to help me.
So let me help you. VAT is not a double tax. So under goods and services tax, there is something in economics they call tax incidence. Who actually pays the tax? Under GST is the final consumer that pays the tax. So somebody go buy something, they bring it, they go China, they go bring jeans trouser. When you, the final consumer, you go and buy that jeans trouser, you bear the incidence for the tax. Because the price that you pay for that jeans trouser, the import duties that they pay at the free port, the GST that is levied on that jeans trouser, everything is combined into that price that you pay. Under VAT, it is the same thing. It is the final consumer that pays for the commodity. What happens under VAT is that when value is added, it is at that point that the tax is collected. And the way it works is that if you buy an input and you pay taxes on the input and you produce an output, when you're selling the output under the VAT system, that tax that you pay for the input is actually subtracted before your final tax liability is determined. So that means that value that you added is what we are trying to tax. We remove your input taxes from there. And then in the end, when the final consumer pays for it, it's the final consumer that actually pays, right? So it's not a double tax. It's not like anytime you add value, we come and tax. No, we deduct the previous taxes that you have paid. This is why VAT implementation is very expensive. You have to implement VAT with technology because you have to all of those transactions that take place along the value chain, you have to knock off all of the initial taxes. And if it is not digitized, people don't have record systems, you will not be able to implement VAT. That's why you see VAT globally, the rate for VAT is between 12% and 18%, because the implementation of VAT itself can take away maybe 5 to 6% of that cost. There are certain commodities, certain products that you also import into the country that go into the production process. There is we call it refund. The tax authority gives you money back. So all of that is built into the VAT. So when I hear people arguing, oh, they're taking it to 15% and all of that, it is those things that are taking place. So right now, globally, the way VAT is implemented, there is something we call electronic invoicing. So that when you go and buy a commodity to a supermarket, for instance, when they issue a receipt to you, they issue an invoice to you. Through that electronic invoicing system, that record goes directly to the LRA, because we don't want people to under-declare. To say today they sold for 1,000, then they tell LRA, say, no, we only sold for 800. So it is that record system, that is that technology-based system that is built in the back, makes VAT implementation to be very expensive. And that's why we cannot make it maybe 10% or 11%, is being placed at 15%. So it's not double taxation. Where you got it right is that all consumption taxes, they are regressive, in the sense that it does not differentiate between rich person and poor person. Because when they are selling the TV 1,500 or they're selling a mobile phone for $50, whether you poor or you rich, you will pay that money. But on the income side, it's progressive, because the more you make money, the higher your income is, the more your tax rate increases. So on the income side, it's progressive, but on the consumption side, it's regressive. But the way you compensate for that is that you make the expenditure side much more progressive. Are we spending on poor people? Do we have safety net programs? Do we have cash transfer programs that go to the poor people? So we collect the money regressively, but we can spend progressively. And that's where all of the issues that we are discussing on the expenditure side become very important as we are introducing VAT and all of these property tax and other things. We have to make sure that the expenditure side is much more efficient, so the people can feel that the taxes that they are paying is coming back to them. So I think that's something the government really needs to balance.
Thank you. Gentlemen, my final question here is very simple. And if President Boakai is listening to you tonight, what is the message that you want him to take away from this discussion about what Liberia needs most from him in the years ahead, given that we have 3 years already gone, to retool, to speed up, to bring about efficiency, especially in service delivery? That's all.
Well, Anthony, I come from the perspective of structural defect. I think major on the docket for why we are where we are is that our governance structure isn't as efficient and effective, therefore not effective enough to take us into the era we want to go. President Boakai is very much aware that one of Liberia's issues is this imperial presidency. We need to curtail some of the powers of the president. And I think without necessarily at this stage spearheading a referendum that will incorporate some of those changes, the president can decide to curtail or underutilize some of those powers that the presidency has. The president has his tentacles across the country, and as a result, a lot of those offices that could be more effective aren't, because the president is fielding politicians and patrons in there to run government. Government needs to be more efficient than that. So I will hope that in the next year or so, we're in year 3. So we haven't hit the second half of this game totally yet, but the president still has not come up with an agenda for governance reform in the country. There are talks about electoral reforms. Part of my time home was to look and work with some partners in there to see how we can be a part of that process as well. But there's the governance reform component. The governance commission has been most ineffective. We have heard nothing from the commission as I speak. Nothing has come out of the commission in terms of turning governance in the country around and looking at some of the institutions.
The commission is dead. I think it's dead. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, rationalizing the structures that we have. Why do we need a Ministry of Youth and Sports, a Ministry of Education, and those two institutions are struggling with who should control education? The Ministry of Youth and Sports is in charge of vocational technical. The Ministry of Education is in charge of academic. We need to step back and look at our governance structure and see how we can make it more effective. From a lens point, like Thomas talked about, the decentralization standpoint, because every time we hear about decentralization, it's been spoken of in silos. One agency speaks about it without a coordinated strategic approach. Government needs to reassess where it is, where they want to go, and how more strategically we can achieve some of those goals. And so there are those of us who come from the standpoint of a small government. We need a smaller government. We need to spend more in terms of private sector development and less on government expansion. Because the larger the government is, like they say about elephant meat, it's just big, but not sweet. Yeah. So we like to see this government, put some time and effort into governance reform, especially starting with the presidency. We need to revisit the powers of the president. The president we don't need all of the assistant ministers and deputy ministers for administration. What purpose do they serve? We could elevate some of those assistant ministers to becoming permanent civil servants, who will sit on top of the directors, and so that there is a permanent structures and politicians can come and go, but those structures stay in place. But as it is, our civil service structure is as it stands, is weak. It needs to be strengthened, and we need to also minimize the level of political appointments in government to make it more efficient. Yeah.
Thank you. Thomas, President Boakai is listening to you tonight.
Yeah.
What are the changes that must be implemented to move the needle and maybe a little faster?
Yeah, I have a long, very long list. I think I think the first thing the president needs to do is do some major reshuffle,
Okay.
right? If you and the reshuffle, for instance, see what they did at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They just took the assistant minister. They say you were play number two, can't go play number three. You were play number three, can't go play number two. So they just move them around, right? Reshuffle has its own benefits. When you move people around, you give them new challenges. To complain that the Ministry of Commerce is not doing well, and they are just there, nothing is happening, no change is taking place, I don't think they will do well. So if this is the third year of the administration, let Dr. Do normally say on this program, at this time, the president needs to be moving away from the thank you cabinet. If you play part in the election and you now say for 2 years and you don't have the capacity, maybe go and rest. Because if you keep people in positions and they can't deliver, it hurts the country overall. But when you put people there who have the capacity, they will grow the country. So that person who does not have the capacity, when you grow the economy grows at 6% and 8%, eventually the benefit will get to him. So there's no need to get someone in a position that they are not doing anything. And we didn't go like ministry to ministry, for instance. Ministry of Commerce. That ministry has 3 strategic functions. They do commerce, that is what we import into the country and all of that. That's their function. They also handle trade. They handle industry. Perpetually, the industry part of the Ministry of Commerce is dead. They don't do anything around it. Look at the strategic position that we are in with all of the global crisis that is ongoing. Everybody is now looking inwards. How do I develop my productive capacity so that I don't rely on other people for everything? But that industry part of the Ministry of Commerce is completely dead. They don't do anything. I think over the past 2 years, the only thing they did was to develop a plan for the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, because that was a continental thing. All the countries were developing it. I think some of the UN agencies help us to be able to do it. But do we have an industrial policy? Now we are moving forward with energy. The government decided that even the MCC grant, they are going to put it in energy. So if we remove the banding constraint of road, we remove the banding constraint of energy in the next 2-3 years, we need to start thinking of industrialization, maybe at the minimum step, but commerce is not doing anything there. We don't have trade agreement with countries. Other countries have these trade agreements. They have different trade agreement with different countries and even regions. We don't have it. Even the AGOA that we have that gives advantage to African countries to export to the US, we don't have any strategy on how local businesses in Liberia can take advantage of AGOA. The Ministry of Commerce does nothing on it. So in the cabinet meeting, the president said they were not doing well. The next morning, they go and shop one shop down. They say, oh, you imported rotten chicken and all of that. That's not why we are paying these people only to do in the country, to do inspection. So the Ministry of Commerce need to do a lot of work. Transport, for instance. Transport is supposed to be developing plans. In the next 10, 15 years, are we going to introduce rail in Monrovia? Maybe light rail. Can we have a rail that just runs from Raleigh to Central Monrovia and introduce these trains? Maybe the short one. They don't do it. They're fighting over license plate and driver license. So the ministries that are supposed to do strategy and policy work, they are completely focused on service delivery. So Ministry of Transport, I don't even know whether we should keep it in the long run or so, whether it should just go away. Because they're not doing anything. They are in charge of planning air transport, land transport, and all of these things. And you don't see them talking about it. So I think, like Dr. Williams said,
you to include post and telecommunication on your list.
Yeah, post and telecommunication, what they did when people bring when people are sending dry fish from Liberia to you people in Minnesota and other places, they want to handle it. So you go to that ministry that so all the boxes you see fish and other things in there. What are they doing on building the IT infrastructure? Because they are the policy arm for what? For telecommunication. The IT background that we need. How do we get internet all the way to Lofa in Maryland? The Ministry of Post and Telecommunications is supposed to be working on that. But you don't really see the heavy lifting. to be happening. But I think the bottom line to all of that,
The address system.
yes, the address system is not working. They are in charge of that. And you know, the address system, it has many benefits. When we do that address system, it even help with property tax collection. Because the house already has an address, you can go there and be able to deliver their what? Their bill for property tax collection. So there's a lot of things that need to happen. The other crisis that we have on hand, when we do it right, we can be able to get benefit from is the land crisis that is taking place. The Senate had a whole day to discuss it. They are calling the land commission people, land authority people to go to the lower house. Everybody calling them. And that's the problem with the country. They will call them, they grill them through question, and when they leave from there, nothing happens. So the land crisis that is taking place, the LAA, I think, is asking for around $50 million to do a cadastral system, which is a modern form of land administration. Cadastral system is that you register the land, who owns the land, and all of that, and you automate it. So even the sale of land to multiple persons can be able to be resolved. The advantage you get from that cadastral system is that it makes property taxation very easy because there's already a system in place for land administration, and then you can overlay it with what? Property tax collection. Instead of all running away from the land crisis, we're supposed to put money in there, let the LAA really move ahead with that cadastral system. So that beyond now, even the address system now can lay over it. The tax, property tax collection, everything will be laid over that cadastral system. These are heavy lifting that we need to focus on. But everything comes back to a broader vision for governance reform. It's happening in bits and pieces. But to me, I will start with we need a new constitution. That 1980 constitution where they were shooting gun and they were writing it, how can we use that constitution at this age after 20 years? Every time a country goes through crisis, you can go to Kenya when they had their election crisis. After the crisis, they went to the constitution and reform it. Tunisia, after the crisis, they went to the constitution and reform it. For us, we fought war. The constitution under which we fought war and people will say that it will stay keeping. The governance commission is doing some work around it with the land reform commission, but it's not going anywhere. So I think we need to change that constitution, even with the issue that was talking about the imperial presidency. It is only through the constitutional framework that we are able to resolve that. That's why, even for instance, on the decentralization side, we cannot elect county superintendent because there's an article that lists the superintendent as those that the president will appoint. So we need a new constitution. The president has said we should have a planning commission. I agree with him. My suggestion is we combine planning and governance because governance commission, they're not doing anything. So let's put planning and governance together so that when you are planning for the future, you do the governance reforms that are needed for that future plans that you are doing. Because sometimes we do all of the big plans, but the institutional framework is not there to be able to move forward. We need a public sector reform strategy. We need to move to program-based budgeting. They need to focus on job. We need a job strategy. They need to also focus on access to finance. That's the most critical ingredient that the private sector needs to be able to grow. We are not doing a lot of work on that. On the issue that he was discussing with these assistant ministers, GC started work way back to introduce these permanent secretaries, just like you have in the British system, right? So every ministry has a permanent secretary that goes maybe for 6-7 years. So even when you change the minister, they are in charge of reform. So when a new minister comes, they sit on the leg of the permanent secretary. They say, this is where we stop. But in the absence of these people, every time we change a new government, that's why we have to do turnover note. I think we started that in 2017 when Manasani was turning over to Georgia. But if you have permanent secretaries, even if there is no turnover note, that person will know what are the reforms that are going on. So we have a lot to do. But to me, I would say let the president shake the people a little bit, bring in some people of competence that you see where there are limitations. The thank you people, we've already thanked them, let them rest, and then we can be able to run. Maybe if we do well, we can even grow to 6-7% with everything that is happening. But you need the state capacity to be able to move these things forward.
Dr. Pearson?
Yeah, thank you for having me this evening. It was a pleasure being in show. I want to thank all my fellow panelists for the night we spent together. You know, when I listen to all of what we discussed tonight, it boils down to a couple of things that, without repeating everything everyone else has said, leadership, broader vision, and corruption. And Mr. Dr. Berger leadership aspect, Thomas talked about the broader vision, and I want to land with the correction. So you say, I'm going to talk to the president. If I'm speaking to President Boakai right now, I think the best advice I can give to President Boakai is to resign. President Boakai should resign and lead. President Boakai is not leading the country. People think he's leading. I think much of what we see happening around us here in Liberia is individual effort. And people are not really speaking to President Boakai. I've had President Boakai sat in meetings that I've tried to view what work in cabinet meetings, and he making concern about things that he himself involved with. Like really, he said he was shocked about the so many foreign travel by government officials, and he the government official who travel as many times as the honor minister. They want to follow his footsteps, right? He says, oh, the employment is an issue. We need to employ the young people. Otherwise, they're going to be a problem for us. They will be the same one who chase us. But he's not creating the policy direction that will provide the jobs for the people. So leadership is not just about identifying the problem. Leadership is bridging the problem with the solution. And President Boakai does not have that. The president to bridge the problem and the solution must come from him, the manner in which he leads the team that he's governing. But he's not providing leadership for the team he's governing. I will put my neck on the chopping board. If President Boakai will sit in cabinet meeting and say he's despondent. He's despondent and disgusted about how people get on the social media and just cuss and say some bad things. Then he sit down there and his information minister sitting right by him. His deputy information minister sitting, and they're the one causing former leaders on the national platform that represents the nation voice. So it means he's not in touch with reality. No, he's not in touch with reality. So I would think President Boakai should just resign. No, so I know you will not resign because he has to pay bills, he has to sustain his family. His family, one of those cronies and ethnic group around him who may be benefiting from in government right now will not want to see him resign. Then let him do me a favor. If he will do nothing else, let him put his foot down on corruption. Because if corruption is not brought under control, none of the good things that Thomas talking about here will happen. None of the good things that you talking here will happen. None of the good things that Dr. Williams talking here will happen. None of the good things I'm talking about, we all will talk about in Liberia will happen. Because corruption is the cancer in our society. And for the president to be in the State of the Nation address validating corruption, then we are not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. I will rest for tonight.
Gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for the very sober discussion that we had. And so, folks, in cyberspace, this brings us to the close of tonight's discussion. What you have heard this evening is exactly what this platform was built for. Honest, informed, and fearless conversation about Liberia and its future. If you want my take on what the president should do since he might be listening, it's just simple. Let the president be restless on the implementation of the Local Government Act. Let decentralized service delivery. The budget. The president should ask his finance minister for a budget that commits 50% of the entire budget to public sector investment. That is what I want the president to do. 50% of the budget. And there should be no new car purchase. I want the president to even sell his bulletproof car. Let him sell it and use the money to buy computers for our schools. The president was talking about job employment. Jobs, employment for the young people. How much is in the budget for that? There are a lot of young people who are all around and they are not working. The president needs to do something about that, and so quickly. We're talking about national security. That is the number one national security issue we have in the country. Instead of them spending $18 million on useless intelligence, Useless intelligence. Putting $400,000 in Ministry of Information budget for media intelligence. It's useless. Commit that money to education. The University of Liberia is a shame. I want the president of the University of Liberia to resign because this woman is not being supported. They're giving the University of Liberia peanuts. I mean, you can't work miracle. I don't understand how that woman is over there. She must be something. A woman who comes from a society where education is being supported is at a place where everybody turns their back on her. The government turns its back on her. And she is now looking in the face of the president and saying, look, I need at least 150 million for the university. And if I can't get it in the next budget, I am going to resign. Because she will fail. And the university is failing because there is no support. And the president needs to address that instead of passing by the building all the time and looking at it in that dilapidating condition and in, a $1 million car. It does not speak well for our country. I don't know how these people in good conscience sleep. I don't know how they sleep in good conscience. Bunch of people unemployed and you don't have money in the budget for that. Your schools don't have library. How many students in our public schools are accessing internet on their school campuses? How many? And it has not clicked to our government to put money in the budget for that. And they are putting money in the budget for useless intelligence for fire service, 400,000. These people need to wake up and get their priorities right. We are talking this in this manner because it is all of us responsibility to make things better in our country. I am tired of all borrowing money to build roads when we can build roads with our own money. I rest my case, gentlemen. Thank you. We speak plainly and fearlessly so that we can do the right thing, because only us have to create the conditions we want in our country. No one else. So the United Party government has so much experience to do way more better than what they are doing. What they're doing, they wear yellow all over the place because you brought yellow machines. You're wearing yellow because you brought yellow machines. Pikine Poiré in Burkina Faso. You know how many machines he's carried in Burkina Faso? He didn't wear yellow. And then the adults are wearing yellow in the streets of Monrovia. What does that tell you? They are not serious for governance in our country, period. And I rest my case. The song says we are all Liberians, and that song is taking us home. Until we see you again, enjoy that song, and bye-bye. Gentlemen, thank you, and thanks to our audience.
We are Liberians.